how and who? Like, and just because, is it really the case that just because it's members of the working class that have now seized control of the means of production, that they're going to be benevolent in a way that the capitalists weren't? I mean, that seems to be psychologically naive beyond even the capacity of Marx. And I have to watch the sarcasm, because I'm going to try to keep that and any potential anger at a minimum tomorrow. But to not think that through, it's like, and then, well, really, you're going to centralize all the production, and that's going to result in better decision making than a distributed market? Who are going to be these geniuses that will run the centralized decision making of the dictatorship of the proletariat, assuming that it isn't the most malevolent of the proletariat that's risen up to take control, which is the most likely outcome if you're not absolutely naive about human nature. And so the fact that, and then they both presume that somehow, and this is not specified either, the dictatorship of the proletariat, I suppose perhaps because it would free the working class from the enslaved shackles of their labor and motivate them more effectively, that although they do not elaborate on that, you're left to guess that an era of superabundance, material superabundance, would manifest itself, in which everyone would have what they needed so that they could pursue their creative endeavors in freedom. And that would constitute the communist utopia. It's like there's so many unexamined assumptions in that set of propositions that it's almost impossible to know even where to start. It's like, I don't understand how this hyperabundance was supposed to manifest itself. It certainly didn't manifest itself in any actual communist countries. It's especially peculiar because Marx, even in the Communist Manifesto, admits that one of the things that communism is really good at doing is producing a surplus of commodities. And these are material commodities. And so that seems to me in paradoxical contradiction with the whole communist, what would you call it, ambition. Because if it's hyperabundance that's going to bring about the Marxist utopia and eventual classlessness, and capitalism is good at producing hyperabundance, why wouldn't you just let the capitalist system run out until it produced universal hyperabundance and we'd have the utopia? Now, the Marxist answer to that would be because the selfish capitalists, for structural and class-based reasons, would keep all the excess production to themselves. But God, that's a lot of pessimism with regards to those on the capitalist side, and a lot of optimism with regards to those on the working class side. No real understanding whatsoever of their common humanity and common flaws. And then the idea that the best way to read history is as the struggle between the proletariat and the bourgeoisie, that strikes me as almost impossibly one-sided and naive. I won't get into that tonight because I'm going to discuss that quite substantially tomorrow. But first of all, there's lots of reasons for conflict, and class position might be one of them, but it is by no means the only one. And even if it was, there's no reason to assume that that's a natural and unique consequence of capitalism. And so the other thing that's staggering about Marx's Communist Manifesto is the absolute absence of any form of biological conceptualization. And maybe that's not surprising given when it was written. It was pre-Darwin, and biology has really exploded in the 20th century. But I read that tract now and I think, well, you just don't know anything about human nature. And I don't mean the human nature that's on the surface, that we only share with other human beings, for example. I mean nature itself and the nature of social interactions and the structure of social hierarchies and the nature of implicit motivation. You knew none of that. And that's actually That's actually a big problem 160 years later, when we do know something about human psychology. And so, well, and then the other thing I hope to do, see, I've probably taken 15 minutes up just to answer that. I've only got 25 minutes in total. The other thing that I want to do is just lay out some of the statistics that have been gathered over the last 10 years by people like Steven Pinker and Hans Rosling, and Marian Tupy at Human Progress, and just point out the magnitude of the absolute economic miracle that's occurring all around the world as millions of poverty-stricken people are lifted out of abject and horrible privation at a rate that's incomprehensible and that was unforeseen. And so I don't know what a Marxist does with that. Deny it, I suppose. Certainly the working class in the US and perhaps elsewhere in the Western world has taken a certain relative hit as a consequence of opening up competition to the rest of the world and then being exposed to competition by third world working class people who could, work for lower wages. But the net consequence of that, as far as I can tell, is that it's not a mere opinion on my part that things are so much better economically now than they were like when I was born, that you can only describe it as miraculous. I mean, one example is the child mortality rate in Africa is now the same as it was in Europe in 1952. Like, that's within the span of a single lifetime. And that's in the poorest area of the world. It's absolutely miraculous. And so, I know 10 statistics of that magnitude, and I'm going to review them and make sure I get the correct 10 to just make the case that, all the dismal consequences of capitalism have fundamentally failed to manifest themselves, especially in comparison to the sins of other forms of communal organization. And so then after that, he'll have a chance to make his case, and we're going to ask each other some questions, and then the moderator and the audience will participate in questions. And I hope I can have a good conversation with Zizek, because he's an interesting thinker, and it isn't even clear to me why he identifies as a Marxist, because he's creative enough in his own right, in some sense, to be his own man, to be his own thinker. And so, anyways, that's how I've prepared. Well, that, and whatever preparation 40 years of thinking and argumentation might also constitute. So, okay, so look, it's 9:30 and I've got a big day tomorrow because I have to prepare for a debate with Slavoj Žižek, and I have to do a good job because it's an important topic and it could have repercussions that are of sufficient magnitude so that it should be taken with the utmost seriousness. I hope I can keep my sense of humor and I can keep my anger under control. I hope I can listen to him as if he is someone who knows something I don't. I hope we can have a productive discussion. I hope I'm prepared properly. I let you all know that you can pick up live stream tickets for that event. That's at 7:30 tomorrow night, Eastern Standard Time. If you go to my website, you can find it under talks. You can find the link, but I think I've already put it in the description of this video. So if you want to participate in this live, then you can electronically. Anyways, otherwise, we will put the lecture, the discussion, or the debate up on YouTube within approximately 4 weeks. And so that's that. I guess. Thank you all for tuning in. Those were good questions. We didn't get to many of them, but they were deep and well worth answering and well worth contemplating. And hopefully, so that mutual act of participative contemplation that we all just engaged in will have salutary effects on each of us. that would be the hope. So best of luck to all of you, and good luck moving upwards. We'll see you in June.